As the high school football season rolls on, we've got you covered. This is Next Round Preps on the Double Down Podcast Network.
Hey everyone, welcome in to another edition of Next Round Preps. John Lunceford, Jerry Young here with you as always. And Jerry, fun second week of region play. We were at Thompson and Spain Park. Thompson getting the win there. We'll talk about that game and their game coming up this week here in just a second. But a lot of games going on across the state. A lot of top 10 matchups in the lower classification. We talked about Elba Brantley. That was a score. Elba got the 7-point win, 42-35. Not only good matchups going in, but good matchups coming out. Anniston, Jacksonville, 30-23. That was number 6 over number 7. Aniana, Cherokee County, a 3-point game. So some good, lower classification games there. And, but 5A, some good games as well. One that I know both of us had our eye on, Gulf Shores taking on UMS Wright. UMS Wright, the top dog down there in 5A. As of right now, we wondered, could Gulf Shores potentially get the win? But UMS Wright ends up edging them out by a touchdown.
Yeah, 35-28. And, John, I really thought, that was the best game in the south part of the state right there. UMS Wright, we know how good they are. Gulf Shores coming on strong the last couple of years. We knew that. Gulf Shores, they've gone through periods of time in their existence where they would get good for a year or two. But I think right now Gulf Shores is building. I think in the next 2 or 3 years we're going to see some really good wins out of Gulf Shores. Jemison traveled to Shelby County in 5A too, and they that was a good ball game for a while, but Shelby County ends up winning it 23-6 in that region down in Region 3 is what it is in 5A.
Yeah, it's some interesting, moving going on with the reclassification. Who's moved up to 6A, who's moved down to 5A, who's moved out of 5A into 4A, or up from 4A. UMS Wright, one of those that's gone up and down. Shelby County down there in 5A now as well with that win. In Class 5A, or in Class 6A, excuse me. No, this is Class 5A. Ramsey and Pleasant Grove. Ramsey, they get the win 21-14 over Pleasant Grove. I mentioned this is kind of a region title game right early on. I feel like a lot of regions have had that. They say the scheduling isn't on purpose to where those games are usually at the end. They're not at the end this season. There's a lot of early ones, and this was one as Ramsey won 21-14.
Did that shock you? It shocked
Normally
me.
It doesn't shock me when Ramsey wins, but the way the season has gone so far, Ramsey has had some good wins, some I'm kind of surprised they lost that game. So it did shock me a little bit because of that.
I think so too. I've been on board with Pleasant Grove for the last 2 or 3 years, and I'll stay there until they lose. But there you go. They lost to Ramsey. That kind of going to shake that region up a little bit, which, by the way, John, as we continue, remember, we're 3 weeks into region play now in some schools, and so we're about to the mid-season break. It's almost time for bracketology for you to start looking at some of this stuff to see, these wins this
Trust
week.
me, I've already been filling in the teams on my bracket here.
Well, last week and this week is really – where a lot of region, whether you make it to the playoffs or not, this is the weeks that it happens.
Yeah, I've already started going through, and there's a game we'll talk about in 7A that I've already written one team out of the playoffs that at this point you never would write them out of the playoffs. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yep.
That is already written out of the playoffs. But yeah, this is the point where it's kind of make or break it. And there's some regions like 7A Region 3, for instance. I have no earthly idea who the fourth team would be in that region. We know pretty much the top 3 are Thompson, Hoover, Hewitt, but after that, I don't know. And we'll talk about the games why I don't know, but those are completely up in the air. Usually every region has good contenders for number 1. It may be 1, 2, 3 teams that are competing for number 1, but figuring out those 4 spots, this is the kind of thing you can't go into the break at 0-3 or 0-4, depending on if you're in that 9-team region. You can't, because it's way too much ground to make up. You're going to get stuck in some tiebreaker where if you've lost your non-region games, you're definitely not going to get in. So this is super pivotal time. That's why that Ramsey-Pleasant Grove game, now right. Ramsey's in the driver's seat. Pleasant Grove has to make sure they don't lose another game, because one more loss now puts you to where you're potentially not even playing at home and, even working yourself out of the playoffs. So, yeah, this is an interesting time of year when it comes to region play.
All right, let's talk about 6A, John, because just real quickly, McAdory and Mountain Brook won. No big deal there as Mountain Brook beat Woodlawn. We knew that was going to happen. And McAdory over Paul Bryant. Big wins there. But that 6A classification game that we know, you and I have been to it. I know I've been to it twice in my lifetime. That region rivalry, Pinson Valley and Clay Chalkville, what a ball game.
I watched every second of that one since our game with Thompson got moved to Thursday. It was on TV Friday, and I I don't know who I'm more surprised about. Clay Chaltville only putting up 14 points after they had just run over everybody so far this season, or Pinson Valley, who has kind of been, really since Patrick Nix left, and obviously Bo Nix, had them winning championships, it's kind of been, where's Pinson going to be? Now you got a new head coach. I don't really know. And everybody says, well, this is a rivalry game. I never in a million years would have said this was a 14-12 game. Now, it poured down rain the whole time, which I think kind of helped contribute to some of the low scoring.
Right.
But Pinson was right in it. Pinson went up right down to the end, 14-12, the final score, only a 2-point game.
I think it exposed a couple of weaknesses for Clay Chaltville. I was surprised that their offense couldn't move. I saw the defensive set of Pinson Valley. I think a lot of teams in 6A noticed that as well, and I think it's going to be changing going forward. However, Clay Chaltville is so talented and so athletic that they're going to be in every ball game. And I tell you where I'm thinking. Next week, not this coming week, but next week, you got Thompson and Clay Chaltville,
yep.
7A defending state champ, 6A defending state champ. That game's been talked about ever since it hit the schedule. So does Clay Chaltville play in that way, expose some weaknesses? I think so. Will a coach like Mark Freeman take advantage of it? Absolutely. We'll see how that goes.
And I know we're Thompson homers when it comes to discussing Thompson,
right,
because we do that broadcast every week. But that's a game before I saw Clay and Pinson, which the first time I really was able to sit down and watch them because it was on TV. But that was a game coming in that I would have been like, I think Clay Chaltville's got it in the bag the way they played so far. And I know Thompson, and I know they played two top 25 teams in the country to start off. So it's hard to look at the Thompson's 2-2 record and say, oh, they're only 2-2 because of who the losses were to. But still, we saw plenty of things that's like, well, they lost all these players on offense, all these skill players. They lost people on the defensive line. They lost that. You can see some holes where Clay Chaltville had looked so strong to start off, and they look so not strong with that offense and Thompson's defense the way they've been playing all season. I still can't wait for it, despite the fact that it was a close game, and despite the fact that Thompson's had their struggles and Clay had their struggles Friday. I still cannot wait for that. That is still the defending 6 and 7A state champions.
Yeah, one time I looked at the screen, and Pinson Valley had 9 guys in the box on defense. I mean, they were selling out. They were daring Clay Chaltville to throw it. Either the quarterback wasn't. Either they weren't running the right routes, it just didn't seem to happen for them. But the only difference in that game was the extra points.
Yeah, and Clay is kind of in that Oregon mode of they go for 2,
right, because
they don't really have a kicker, and you could tell it on kickoffs as well. So it was 8-6, I think, at halftime,
right,
and then they scored, didn't get the 2-point, ended up being 14-6. Pinson scores, doesn't get their 2-point, which is why it ended up being 14-12. But yeah, very interesting result there. But it is a rivalry game, and that is the one rivalry I know Clay would love to play Hewitt Trussville. Again, that's a whole different thing, but the one rivalry they do still have is Pinson Valley. So big game there between Clay Chaltville and Pinson Valley. I got to give a little shout out to my Homewood Patriots for getting the win over Calera, 48-38, back and forth all game long, but Homewood getting the win there in 6A Region 3. And how about this in 6A Region 3? We've talked about Briarwood, their first game of the season, a huge loss to Clay Chaltville, 48-0, I believe it was,
right,
which instantly made us think, Clay's the best in the state, Briarwood, what happened? Well, I'd say now more so than anything, Briarwood, what happened, because since then they've had 3 one-score games. Spain Park, a team who is trying to rebuild but still isn't quite there yet. Chilton County, a team who's playing better than usual but not a team that's typically there. And then Pelham, getting the 1-point win over Briarwood last week.
And not to shock, it shouldn't be shocked anymore. 3 games Briarwood's played have come down to the very last play of the game. This was no different, except they were on the losing end of it as Pelham gets some wins. So, and congratulations to your Patriots too. That was a good win over Calera, 38-28.
They got Ben Russell this week. Should be a good game there, as Ben Russell's in the top 10 in the ASWA poll. I mean, really, that's kind of the winner of that game seems to be in the driver's seat to win the region, since Homewood's already beaten Helena at Pelham this week as well. So that region could kind of almost be decided before we head into the break. One more game in 6A. 2 more. I just want to throw out real quick. One, Saraland beat Spanish Fort 35-24. Big game down there in Region 1. Saraland continuing to be the strong team there. And that also has been a region title game in the past. And then Hillcrest Tuscaloosa beating Hueytown 54-44. Hueytown falling off a little bit. Hillcrest, we've talked about so far this season, being one of the strong teams there in Region 4, but they get the 10-point win over the Golden Gophers.
Yeah, and also Helena traveled to Chilton County. That was an overtime game. Helena came out victorious 35-28, and one more in 6A, Coleman and Decatur. The reason I'm mentioning that, 3 overtimes. Can you imagine? Decatur came out on top 39-36.
High school overtime's almost kind of the middle ground between college and nothing because college, you start at the 25, now you do 2 series, but now you have those 2-point overtimes. Once you get to the third overtime, you have to go for 2 each time. High school, back it up to the 10. They basically have one drive from the 10-yard line.
Right.
Typically gets it over quick, honestly, because one team will score and one team won't a lot of times. But, when you get to 3 overtimes, that's a heck of a game. I've watched a 5-overtime game. My alma mater went to a 5-overtime game in the Super 6, and those overtimes can get wild there in high school football. Moving on to Class 7A, Fairhope got a big win over Mary Montgomery, 38-23 in 7A Region 1. I don't see anybody catching Fairhope when it comes to the South, especially now that Theodore and McGill-Tulin over the last few years have dropped out. And then 7A Region 2, the team I think have already taken out of playoff contention, and it's so bizarre 4 weeks into the season to say they're already out of playoff contention. Prattville, they fall to Dothan 14-10. But Enterprise crushed Smith Station 58-14, so I don't know who necessarily the 4th team will be there. But with Opelika getting a big upset win on Central Phoenix City 17-14, then you have Auburn. Who that 4th team is, I don't know, but I can't imagine it's Prattville after losing the way they've lost so far this season.
Yeah, they're going to have to play a lot better than that. And, a little bit of work that I did on Prattville, they're got troubles at quarterback, to be quite honest with you. That's where their weakness is. So, they're going to have to change it, get him into a situation where it's shorter passes and a whole lot more of the running game. We'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, Opelika getting the win 17-14. So it looks like Opelika's in the driver's seat now. It'll be between Opelika Auburn for that top spot. And then you have Central Phoenix City. But then Dothan, Enterprise, Smith Station all kind of sitting there. But I think Enterprise is a big winner for Smith Station. Kind of push Smith Station to the back, and Dothan and Enterprise will be the 2 teams that we'll wait to see what happens between them. In 7A Region 3, Hewitt-Trussville 35-7 over Tuscaloosa County. County kind of brought back down to earth after a 3-0 start and being up in the top 10. Hewitt-Trussville's offense has been clicking pretty good so far this season. Their only loss to Central Phoenix City there early on in the year. Chelsea getting the win over Oak Mountain, though. 21-7. How about the Hornets finally getting on the board with their first regular season win and over a team who had been a playoff team in 7A Region 3.
That's right. Chelsea decided to wake up after losing 3. Got a win on the board. Of course, they got a tough time this week. We'll talk about that game coming up with against Thompson.
Yep. Hoover, Vestavia. We were watching this one. It was ending as our game ended, and Vestavia, Hoover tied 14 apiece. Hoover scores, gets the extra point blocked. Vestavia drives for the win, doesn't get it. 20-14, the Bucks get the win, but 2 close wins for Hoover now to start region play, albeit against their 2 biggest rivals, Spain Park, Vestavia. But a 24-10 win over Spain Park, a 20-14 win over Vestavia. 2 teams Thompson has now beaten 34-14, 35-14. So bigger wins over those teams. So Hoover, kind of some question marks out there.
I know, and you don't expect Hoover to even be down a single year. They're always, they may lose 1, may lose 2. But I want to tell you, this Hoover team's got some holes in it, and this could be the year where a couple of teams could take advantage of being beat up on by Hoover for years.
Based on who they're playing this week and who they still have on their schedule, from Bracketology, I have already dropped them down out of having a home game. I have Hewitt and Thompson as the top 2 teams right now, the way they have played. But we'll look at the schedule coming up this week. That'll help decide some things. And then our game, Thompson, Spain Park. Thompson won 35-14. Kind of a slow start, but overall, pretty, average win for Thompson as far as, what we're used to seeing. And they get the win by 21 over Spain Park. So Thompson, Hoover, Hewitt, and Chelsea all getting big wins there in 7A Region 3. All right, when we get back, we'll look at the games coming up, including a big one between Hoover and Hewitt-Trussville, which I think will help decide that and maybe put, the one team Thompson's got to beat. So got to play both of them, obviously. But a lot of good games coming up in Class 6A and 7A this week on Next Round Preps.
At Albritton and Artavino Family Dentistry, we know how valuable your time is. So if it's a crown you need, let us take care of it with our same-day crown service. We have the latest technology allowing us to build your custom crown right here in our office while you wait. Albritton and Artavino Family Dentistry is here to serve you.
Albritton and Artavino are easy to find. Exit 238, that's the Alabaster exit, next door to American Family Care, or call them at 205-664-7610.
Alabaster Living has been a major community supporter for years in the Alabaster area and is excited to introduce their new streaming TV channel. Alabaster Living Television can be found on Roku and Fire Stick and has new video content featuring Thompson High School, the city of Alabaster, local churches, businesses, and citizens added weekly. Just load ALTV to your streaming device and start watching to see all that Alabaster has to offer. You can also follow Alabaster Living on Facebook and YouTube to stay on top of everything going on in the community. Add ALTV to your Roku or Fire Stick device today.
Hi, I'm Jerry Young. I want to tell you about Holloway Home Loans here in Central Alabama. Thomas Holloway is a former Oak Mountain Eagle who moved on to play his college ball and earn his degree from West Point. Thomas is still an Army reservist and an expert in residential home mortgages, offering personalized service at an amazing price because he works for you and not the financial institutions. Call Thomas today at 205-413-2858, or you can email him, thomas@hollowayhomeloans.com. That's Holloway Home Loans and Edge Home Financing, MLS 1985757.
Cartridge World of Vestavia is well known for the lowest prices on toner cartridges, but are you aware of their free printer program? You heard right. There's no catch. Simply agree to buy your ongoing printer cartridges from Cartridge World of Vestavia, and we'll provide you with a printer at no cost. A Cartridge World expert will personally consult with you to find out your business's exact needs so you can have a stronger bottom line. Visit Cartridge World of Vestavia Hills on the web or call 205-822-6767. That's Cartridge World of Vestavia. And welcome back in here to Next Round Preps. We talked about the week that was. Now time to move on to the week that is coming up on Friday, Thursday and Friday for teams here in week 4, officially the 5th week of the season for most teams. In some lower classification, really want to throw these out real quick. We won't get too in depth on them, but Andalusia, the number 3 team in Class 4A, taking on Montgomery Academy, the number 7 team in 4A, Montgomery Academy, coming off a Super 7 appearance last year. They move up to 4A, and that is 4A Region 2, so it should be a good top 10 game right there in 4A. And then another 4A game in Region 1, a team we've talked about a lot. Really 2 teams we've talked about a lot. Orange Beach, Jamie DeBose has got them playing well. They're 3-0 right now, ranked number 8 in Class 4A. TR Miller 3-1. They're outside of the top 10 because they had that loss, but TR Miller at Orange Beach should be a good game there between TR Miller, and we all know what Jamie DeBose can do.
I know. Well, don't forget Brett Hubbard can do it too at TR Miller. True. So, that's going to be a great ball game.
It should be. And elsewhere in the South in 5A, Vigor, a team who has, some years they're playing for Super 7. Some years they kind of fall off the map. This year, so far, they're number 8 in the ASWA poll. They take on the number 1 team, UMS Wright, who got a big win over Gulf Shores by a score last week. So if UMS Wright can get past Vigor, it'll really leave Faith Academy as the only other team they have to get past there in 5A Region 1. So it should be a good one down there in 5A Region 1. All right, moving on to Class 6A, a rematch of I mentioned the 5 overtime game with my alma mater, Homewood. They are taking on the team they played in that 5 overtime game. Benjamin Russell, a team who is all over the board again. Once again, I'm used to when I played in school, 2000, 2001, that's who Homewood played in the state championship, had a 5 overtime win, and then had a loss the next year in the Super 6 there at Legion Field. They came into our region when I was a junior and senior. It was good, close games. We got the wins in that. And then Ben Russell kind of disappeared, and they started having some 3-7 seasons and kind of disappeared. Homewood dropped off, and they went up to 6A as well. Well, now they're both sitting in a good position. They're both sitting with really good records. I think they both have 3 wins so far in the season, and this is setting up to be a pretty good game in 6A.
Yeah, I agree. And Benjamin Russell, you're right. A lot of people don't realize this, but former HSAA Executive Director Steve Savarese kind of made his name at Benjamin Russell. He was a good coach there for a long time. So, I'm glad to see Benjamin Russell back up on the winning side. I think it helps 6A. Very similar to the way I think when Prattville and Foley are strong in 7A. Benjamin Russell's one of those teams that when they're strong. So that's going to be a close matchup. Homewood has got an advantage because they're at home.
Yep.
And that's going to be huge because I tell you, Benjamin Russell coming up 280, they're not used to that. They're used to the smaller town, got my little thing going on. It's going to be a different atmosphere.
Homewood and Briarwood kind of get stuck in that position where sometimes they play in the north, sometimes they play in the south. I was in this region with Ben Russell. We had to go to Ben Russell. We had to go to Valley, which was a long drive. We had to go to a lot of these places that were far away. Homewood and Briarwood now down in the south. So Ben Russell's going to have to come up to Homewood, come up to Briarwood, and make some of those treks. Even Pelham Helena, a pretty good drive for Ben Russell as well. But the winner here will be in first place firmly in 6A Region 3 as we head to the break next week. Elsewhere in 6A Region 3, though, Pelham and Helena, two teams fighting for position. Helena already lost to Homewood. Pelham, they got the big win over Briarwood last week. Pelham and Helena, big rivalry there. Obviously, Helena splitting off from Pelham. Seems it's like almost a decade ago. It seems like just yesterday they split. I can remember when Helena didn't exist. It's kind of like Spain Park. I can remember when Spain Park didn't exist, when James Clemens didn't exist. But yeah, it should be going there between Pelham and Helena.
I think that's one to put a check mark by, because I think that has definite home field advantage type playoff game down the road.
Plugged it in, and it was only a 4-point game in my model, so should be a close one there. In 6A Region 5, you have Gardendale taking on Parker. Gardendale with Chad Eads, they've done a great job building that program into being a good playoff contender every single year. Parker, meanwhile, has been looking pretty good also. Parker, they got a big win over Ramsey. We're talking about Ramsey with the win over Pleasant Grove. They are one of the top teams in 5A. Well, Parker came in, I believe, the second week of the season and beat Ramsey pretty good. Obviously, two Birmingham City schools right there. So Parker hosting Gardendale. I still like Gardendale in this one, though, the way that Chad Eads has built that team up.
I do, too, but I don't know what your point spread would be, but I'm going to tell you this is a close ball game. 14, really?
I had 2 touchdowns.
I got it closer than that.
But it's, different opponents. Gardendale stepped out of state and played some teams, so it's kind of throwing things out of whack, but I think it will be a little bit closer than that. And then 6A Region 6, Pinson Valley. We mentioned the close game they had against Clay-Chaltville last week. They're taking on Oxford now, an Oxford team that just a couple of years ago was state champion. They were defending state champion when we went up, and Thompson beat them pretty good to open the season. And they kind of fell off last year, but now trying to make their way back in a very tough region that I think we all agree Clay is going to win. But Pinson Valley and Oxford now kind of playing for second place.
I don't know. I kind of like Oxford in this game, and I don't know why I say that. Oxford has put millions of dollars into their facility over there. If you hadn't been lately, and when we were over there last time, it was under construction, but all that's finished now. They got fantastic facilities. As a matter of fact, if you're driving on I-20 there and you're coming back from Atlanta, when you get to the Oxford exit, if you look to the right, you can actually see the stadium. It's just a block or two off the interstate there. Yep. That's where Oxford High School is and where their stadium is. And so if you're, if you want to see what I'm talking about, it's real easy to get off the exit there and just kind of drive around it. But what a great facility. But I kind of like Oxford in this game for some strange reason.
I got Pinson Valley favored by a little over a touchdown. But, yeah, I think Oxford has a chance to win this one here. I think a lot of that has to do with what they did against Clay-Chaltville last week in a just kind of an ugly rain game that they had to play in. Let's see. 6A Region 1, you have Theodore at Spanish Fort. Theodore team dropping down from 7A Region 1, had been a region title contender there in 7A, and now Spanish Fort, after losing to Saraland, they have to get past a team like Theodore. It used to be Saraland, and that's kind of it. Blount would compete every now and then, and St. Paul's, when they jump up, would compete every now and then. But Theodore now, they're a legit team that you have to worry about for the region championship down there.
Absolutely. John, when I was growing up, the biggest rivalry around, other than the Birmingham City schools when they played each other, but I grew up in Bessemer. I can remember when Bessemer and Hueytown were the biggest game on the map. This year they're playing it, but Hueytown should walk all over Bessemer this year.
Yeah, I guess it was Hueytown and Just Lanier back in the day.
Yeah, well, before that it was Bessemer High School, and then it went Just Lanier. Now it's Bessemer City School. So, Bessemer just seems to have so much turnover. They can't seem to settle down. I don't know. Whether it's administration or whether it's school board, I don't know what the problem is, but I know that every year over the last 5 or 6 years, Bessemer just hadn't been what they should be.
Yeah, and one more 6A game real quick before we head on to 7A that I want to mention at least. Clay-Chaltville hosting our friend George Bates in Center Point. Center Point moving up to 6A. Rough move up for them from 5A, but, can they potentially work their way in and try to get a playoff spot there in that region?
Well, George Bates he's got a special place in his heart to beat Clay-Chaltville ever since he was at minor.
Yep.
And I tell you, it goes back to a game to where they were scheduled to play at minor, and Clay-Chaltville at the time pretty much said, we don't want to come over there and play at that bad stadium. And it kind of rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And so ever since then, George Bates loves beating Clay-Chaltville. So now he's got his Center Point guys, man, they're playing good. They blew out somebody last week, I think 50-something to whatever. But so that's going to be a ball game.
it's no relation, but Tony Lunceford Field there at Minor. I feel a little personal, even though it's not related to me. Right. I just like, everybody's like, oh, Lunceford, that's it. No relation, but good name there for Minor Field. All right, moving on to Class 7A in Region 2, a couple of interesting matchups. Not a super, strong schedule in Region 1 and Region 4, at least from what I saw, but Dothan at Smith Station. This is a game that I never would have circled back in the day, but these are the two teams that have now beaten Prattville. Dothan taking on Smith Station. I think it could be a good close game, but this one could potentially, if Dothan gets the win, because Enterprise beat Smith Station pretty good, right. If Dothan gets the win, could potentially put Dothan in position to get that 4th spot.
More likely, the only reason I'd say Dothan would not be favored if they aren't, would be is that they're traveling over to Smith Station, which is a little bit harder to get to from where they are. But, yeah, and then you got Prattville, who's, lost 2 games. They got Opelika, they're going down Prattville. 3 games.
Poor Prattville. I mean, that's a tough start to the schedule. But the thing is, that's why we keep bringing Prattville up. They lost to Dothan. They lost to Smith Station.
Right.
They haven't played Enterprise. They haven't played Central Phoenix City. They haven't played Auburn. Those are the games that – you go ahead and mark as losses, and you got to win all the rest of them. Right. The fact that they've already lost these games, plus Opelika coming into that region, it's a 9-team region now, so they're actually in their 4th region game because they started in week 1.
Right.
So anyway, I don't know what's going to happen with Prattville, but Opelika, they do travel to Prattville in 7A Region 2. All right, 7A Region 3, Vestavia and Spain Park. Vestavia and Spain Park start their season with Thompson and Hoover each. Now they're taking each other on. Vestavia at Spain Park. I got to lean in the direction of Vestavia right now, just from what we saw. It's almost identical scores for Thompson. It was 34-14 for Vestavia, 35-14. That's just because of a missed extra point, against Spain Park or against Vestavia. But Hoover, 14-point win over Spain Park, 7-point win over Vestavia. So you typically would think, you do the whole transitive property and everything, that Vestavia would win this. But I still do like Vestavia in this game.
Well, I do too, and that's 2 up-and-coming programs in Region 3. They dropped off a little bit. I'm going to tell you, you watch these 2 teams right here. Vestavia next year and Spain Park next year are going to be 2 totally different football programs than they are now. And that's a perfect example of 2 schools that I've been saying for the years about Prattville and Foley. You look at these 2 schools with Vestavia and Spain Park, and you say, well, they're going to get better. They're going to be a team to be reckoned with. Right now, I don't see that happening in the south part of the state, and that's 2 of the schools that makes the north part of the state so much stronger.
These are 2 of the schools that it's going to eventually get to the point that whatever team is 5th or 6th in 7A Region 3, it's like they probably could have beaten everybody else that's coming to the playoffs. You only choose 4 to put in there. It almost kind of makes you wonder for a 32-team super playoff. Let everybody start in the playoff, because you're going to get some good games, especially with those teams, if they're able to make it. But, yeah, Spain Park, Vestavia both investing in their programs as well, both upgrading to big jumbotrons in their end zone, kind of coming into the 21st century with their scoreboards, obviously hiring new head coaches who have had success at other places. Robert Evans at Mountain Brook being a defensive coordinator, always real strong defense at Mountain Brook. And then, of course, Tim Vakakis at Jackson Olin, and the whole Vakakis coaching line there with his dad being so good as well, and coming from Homewood and being real successful at Homewood as well.
Right. So, yeah, I've got those 2 teams. I just know that let's go ahead and talk about Tuscaloosa County too, because Adam Weingarten is going to be – he's better this year. I put him in the same class as those 2 schools. Tuscaloosa County's invested some money in that field and that program. They went out and hired Adam Weingarten, and he's a winning coach. He's not going to sit there, long and be a losing season. I mean, he's going to put it on them. So, man, Region 3 is getting stronger.
Yeah. Mountain traveling to Tuscaloosa County to play on that new turf. It was new last year, I think. When we went up there a year before.
I'm real curious what you think about this game.
So, I know Tuscaloosa County started off 3-0, and now they're 3-1. Outside of maybe that first Central Tuscaloosa game and maybe Bessemer City, but I would not have picked them. Right. I would have thought, look, Tuscaloosa County may get there eventually, but they're not there yet. Chelsea has had their ups and downs, and, of course, that game was a 1-point game. But I never in a million years would have said, I think Tuscaloosa County has a chance to beat Oak Mountain, but I think they have a chance to beat Oak Mountain. It's tough for me to say, yes, they will win this game. I plugged the numbers in. I still have Oak Mountain favored in this game because they have been the better team.
Right.
But once again, just look at the similar opponents. Chelsea has played both of these. They lose to Tuscaloosa County by a point in a shootout, 42-41. So it's not like, it was a poorly played game by either offense. Both offenses did well. But then Chelsea goes and beats Oak Mountain, and by multiple scores, 21-7 was the final there. So that makes me think Tuscaloosa County has a chance to win this one, and I think, we don't bet on high school, but depending on what the money line on that one for Tuscaloosa County would be, I would take it because I think there's a good, strong chance that they win this one.
I pick them outright. I just don't know why. I tell you why. Because what I just discussed about Vestavia and Spain Park and Tuscaloosa County, for some reason, and I'll get proven wrong, I'm sure, this is not a slap, I just don't feel that same feeling about Oak Mountain. I don't know why I don't have that same feeling. It's no reason that I shouldn't, but I just feel like Tuscaloosa County wants it more, maybe.
Losing your quarterback, I forgot his name. It was Evan Smith, Evan something. That was quarterback last year.
Yeah.
I'm blanking on it. But, Tyler Crane comes in, has him at quarterback. He was a multi-year starter there, kind of was that entire team for Oak Mountain and was what put them in position to be a playoff team. He's gone. So now really comes the hard work in his second year for Coach Crane to be able to build that program and turn it into something. And what we've seen so far hasn't quite happened. And so I don't really know what to expect from him.
Well, I'll tell you why I feel that way. Because they lost last week to Chelsea, and they shouldn't have. And they didn't just lose by, hey, we missed an extra point. No, they lost by 2 touchdowns. They were beat.
Yeah.
And so, maybe that's why I feel that way. But I'm going to pick Adam Weingartner. If I was betting man like you and there was a line, of course, if there was a line, you'd be the one picking the line, so I'd have an advantage. But
I'll say this. When I'm going through, I'll go through at halftime and read the live scores on our broadcast for what's happening. No matter what the score is in that game, it's not going to surprise me.
That's right.
Oak Mountain could be up by 40, won't surprise me. Tuscaloosa County could be up by 40. The way things have gone wouldn't surprise me. Or a close game either way wouldn't surprise me. But we'll be very interested to see what happens with that. And of course, we'll recap it here on Next Round Press. All right, 2 more. Hoover at Hewitt-Trussville. This is the game of the week for me. The top 2 teams in 7A Region 3 outside of Thompson. And I think the winner here is firmly going to be in second place. That would have been the case probably anyway, but I also think the winner here then is a strong contender to potentially take first from Thompson, depending on what kind of Thompson we see when they play. But, Hewitt-Trussville, they're strong and plugging everything in. I never thought I would have said Hewitt-Trussville would be favored in this game, but I believe Hewitt-Trussville's favored in this game.
I agree with you 100%. I just think if you look the last 2 weeks at how Hoover's played, and you look at the last 2 weeks how Hewitt-Trussville's played, ever since they lost to Central Phoenix City, they've been a very strong team. I'm going Hewitt-Trussville, not that we tend to start picking right now, but these are games that's so close it's kind of fun to try to figure out who it is. But I think Josh Floyd's going to give Hoover all they want.
In the 3 in-state games they played, because they played a team out of Tennessee that wasn't that good, they destroyed them in the second week of the season. But 17-24-20 is what they've scored. Hasn't been super high scoring from Hoover when they typically could put up a lot of points in the past. Hewitt-Trussville has put up a lot of points in every game they've played. I think that offense is going to be too much for Hoover.
How about this? 21 against Central Phoenix City, 64 against Gadsden, 48 against Oak Mountain, and 35 against Tuscaloosa County. Yeah, they got an offense.
That's an offense. And then the final game, the game will be at Thompson at Chelsea. Chelsea getting that win, so some momentum for Chelsea. A whole different ballgame when Thompson comes in as opposed to Oak Mountain.
Well, obviously, we certainly hope so since we're calling the Thompson game, but I agree with you. Chelsea, how in the world they won last week so good, who knows? But I'm all about Thompson really taking it to Chelsea. I think this is going to be one of those games where we can kind of pad the books on some personal records for some kids.
Yeah, I think that win for Chelsea will give them a little momentum to start off, and I'm sure the crowd will be excited, but it will disappear pretty quickly if I had to guess. So Thompson at Chelsea, we'll have the call for you on the Warrior Nation Network. You can watch and listen to that game. Subscribe to the NFHS Network as well to watch all the other good games after you're done watching the Thompson-Chelsea game. And, of course, you can go back and watch everything on demand as well. It is really good value if you want to watch literally anything in high school. I highly recommend getting the NFHS Network.
Yeah, you can sign up for the NFHS Network through Warrior Nation Network. You can go to warriornationnetwork.org and click the Watch Now button, and it'll take you right to the NFHS Network where you can sign up there if you'd like to, instead of having to Google it and figure out how to do it. So that's the easy way to do it. warriornationnetwork.org, and John and I have the call on Friday night.
And I have Thompson and Homewood favored. The 2 teams I want to watch always, they're favored at the top, and I can just click on it, and there's every game that I wanted to watch from them. So that's the game we'll be at. We'll have all the games recapped for you here on Next Round Preps next week. as we head into non-region play. And like Jerry said, we already know the game of the week next week, Thompson and Clay Chaltville. But we'll see what both those teams do this week, what everybody does when we get back next week on Next Round Preps.